Today's topic is practice, and this is Tips with Trev, the show where I give developing baseball players some easy tips to end their slumps faster and become a superstar sooner. Let's do it. All right, when talking about practice, there's two things you need to keep in mind. One, what are you trying to accomplish? And two, what method of practice is going to be best to help you accomplish that? So what you're trying to accomplish just comes down to the skill that you're trying to practice, or whatever it is. So you could be practicing your pregame routine. You might be running through it so you know it, you memorize it, your body can handle it, and just checking that out. Okay, that's one way to do it. That's one thing you could be practicing. You could be practicing a new pitch. You could be practicing command. You might be practicing bat speed. You might be practicing mental game, covering first. Like there's a lot of different things you can practice. And there's different methods of practice that you would use for each of those traits. For instance, if you're practicing your pregame routine, you probably want to run through it exactly how you're going to do it. And do it a couple different times just so you become familiar with it. You know how your body's going to feel, stuff like that. If you're practicing a pitch, you might not just want to throw it over and over and over and over and over again to practice it. That might not be the best way. So define clearly in your head what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to do a routine, if you're trying to mimic a feel, if you're trying to do something that you're not trying to, you might not be trying to improve a specific skill set. You're just practicing an overall feeling, or you're practicing a routine or something like that, then block practice is probably your way to go. This could be before a game. If you're practicing to get loose before the game and you want to get a really good feel of a certain pitch, like it's probably good to do some block practice. If you're going to be using the skill that you're practicing that day in competition, it's good to do block practice. If you want to know how your body's going to feel in your routine, good to do block practice. The other type of practice is randomized practice. And so that's the second thing you need to keep in mind. Are you going to do block or are you going to do randomized? So a little bit of the difference here. Block practice would be doing the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, so I want to get really good at throwing a fastball to a specific location. Okay, well, I'm going to throw a fastball to that location over and over and over and over again. This is the traditional way of practicing command. You get on a mound and you look at the spot that you're going to try to throw to, and you try to throw the pitch there. And then you do it again and again and again. You throw 20 fastballs, 30 fastballs, 40 fastballs, and you say, okay, great. I got a good day of practice in. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll do it again. That's a traditional way of doing things. Block is you have a block of something that you're going to do and you just do that and nothing else. Just that's the block for the day. Randomized practice would say that you have a bunch of different things that you're going to be doing that day. You might throw a fastball down and away. You might throw a curveball up and in. You might, you randomize the different pitches that you're going to throw. You might throw a heavier ball, a lighter ball. You might throw a football in between. You might take a couple swings in between throwing pitches. You might cover first in between throwing pitches. So there's a lot of different randomization of the skills going on. So why would that be good? You would think that you would be practicing what you want to accomplish and you would just practice that over and over. And if you practice that more than anybody else, that you'll be better at that skill. Well, that's not exactly how it works all the time. See, the brain controls everything that the body does, and it's the thing that learns and retains information and learns a new skill and allows you to execute a new skill. Well, the brain has a tendency to check out. To go on autopilot. When something isn't stimulating for the brain, it just says, okay, yep, I've done that, got it, and it just kind of shuts down and you just kind of go on autopilot. There's a really interesting study that I read one time. It looked at people who were learning how to type, and they split them into two groups, a block practice and a randomized practice. The block practice group would type, they were both given a paragraph that they had to type. The block practice group would type one word at a time. So they would get really good at typing T-H-E, and they would practice T-H-E, 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 and they would type it, let's say 100 times. I don't remember exactly how many times they would type it, but they would practice one word at a time, and then they would go to the next word, and they would type that word. And they would go to the next word, and they would type that word. And so this was their method of practicing. So over the course of the 6 or the 8 weeks of the study, They practiced one word at a time. Ultimately, they practiced all the words in the paragraph, and that was their method of learning to type the paragraph. The randomized practice group typed the whole paragraph all the way through over and over and over again. And so what they did is they practiced 3 times a week, and they would test each group at the end of the day on the words that the block practice group practiced. So if I practice as a block practice, the sand is brown, then the randomized group that has typed those same words in that same session but had typed a bunch of other words would practice the sand is brown. And what they found at the end of each individual session is the group that practiced the block, just typing the words individually over and over with no other words, they outperformed. They typed more accurately and faster than the randomized practice group. So then the next day, when they came in later that week, they would test them on the exact same words, and they would test the block practice group and the randomized practice group again. And what they found is that there was no difference in the block practice versus the randomized practice group. In fact, the block practice group had gotten worse at typing those words, while the randomized practice group had maintained the exact same ability to type those words. And so this went on and on and on. And at the end of the test, at the end of the study, the ultimate test was to type the full paragraph. And the randomized group typed it, and the block practice group typed it. And the block practice group was less accurate at typing it and much slower at typing it, while the randomized practice group typed the paragraph very accurately and very fast. And so what they concluded was that block practice is good to get a training effect, a practice effect, where you type something over and over and over and you get good at it, and for that day you're good at it, but then your retention of that skill does not last out into the future. Whereas the randomized practice group wasn't as good as the block practice group on an individual day, but their skill retention lasted much longer. They were more accurate, faster at it, and they retained the skill for a lot longer. So how does that translate to baseball? Well, if you want to warm up in a pen to face a lineup that day, well, you probably want to get good at throwing your fastball to a certain location and throwing the curveball to a certain location. So you could block practice those. You would get the training effect, and then you would go into the game and be better off at doing that. But if you're practicing it in a bullpen, you want to maintain that skill set for a lot longer period of time. So it would make more sense to randomize your practice. And there's some stuff that goes with randomized practice called contextual interference. I'll get into that at a later date. That's not for this video. But learn what, identify what skill you're trying to learn and say, do I want to be good at it today? Or do I want to be good at it in the future? Am I trying to build a skill set for the future? And then you can kind of decide, do you randomize or do you block your practice? Now, block practice is very simple. Take the thing that you're going to do, that you want to practice, and just do that. So if it's swinging at 90 mile an hour fastball, just swing at a bunch of 90 mile an hour fastballs. If it's making sure you're practicing your forward move and hitting, just do that over and over. And you want to be really good at that for that day, for that game. If you're trying to build a skill set for a longer period of time, if you're in a practice setting and you don't have to compete that day, randomized practice is probably your way to go. So how can you randomize your practice? There's a couple different things. You can change, usually it breaks down into 3 categories, things that you can randomize in your practice. You can change the system. So the system would be you. You can fatigue your right leg or your left leg. You can do a bunch of push-ups in between and then go throw and then take some swings and then go throw. And so you change how the system itself is functioning. Now, that one's not my favorite one to train because you have not my favorite one to change because you have the added risk of injury. If you fatigue your arms doing something and then you're throwing, then I don't like changing the system nearly as much for pitching specifically. So you can change the system. You can change your environment, the environment that the system is in. So that could be the mound. You could throw on flat ground or down the mound. You could throw sideways on a mound, up a mound. You could throw in sand. You could throw on grass. Like there's a lot of different ways you can change your environment. That can also be having fans screaming at you or no fans screaming at you. That can be it's hot, or it's cold. There's a lot of different things. Just think about your environment that you're in and how you're interacting with the ground or with your environment. So that's the second thing you can change. And the third thing you can change is the activity. So the activity could be throwing a football versus swinging a bat. Different activities. The body has to pull a different motor learning pattern for each of those. And so you pull the motor learning pattern to throw a football and you throw the football. And then your mind has to go access I'm going to swing a bat now and pull that one, and then you swing the bat. So you're constantly changing up what's going on, and your mind is constantly having to adapt. Another thing you could do is like change the weight of the bat that you're swinging or the ball that you're throwing. Swing a 33-ounce bat, then swing a 25-ounce bat. Now you've changed the activity a little bit because you've changed the implement that you're using, and that's part of the activity. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about changing that. And generally speaking, you can get about 2 to 3, maybe 4 reps in of something with the same implement, the same system, the same environment before your mind starts saying, oh, yep, I've done that, checked out. So every 3 to 4 reps, you want to change something up so that you're forcing your body to learn and adapt and create a stronger set of solutions to that problem that you're trying to solve. That's how I like to think about it. If you have an equation, I'm a math nerd, so this makes sense to me. It probably won't make sense to any of you, but if you have an equation and you only have one number that satisfies that equation, well, whenever you get a number that isn't that, then your equation doesn't work. But if you have an equation where you have 100 numbers that satisfy it, well, anytime you get any of those 100 numbers, you're going to be successful. If 1,000 numbers satisfy it, then you can be successful even more percentage of the time. So that's kind of how I think about it. For example, if the equation is x is greater than or equal to 0, well, you have a lot of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that satisfy that equation. Well, that could be, in physical terms, that could be, well, I've thrown on a mound, I've thrown down the slope of a mound with a 3-ounce ball, a 4-ounce ball, a 4.5-ounce ball, a 3.5-ounce ball, a 5-ounce ball, a 5.5-ounce ball, a 6-ounce ball, and I can make all these balls go to the target. Well, then no matter what you face in a game, like it doesn't matter if the ball's a little heavier, a little lighter, a little bigger, a little smaller. You're going to be able to accomplish the task. If I've swung a 25-ounce bat and a 35-ounce bat and everything in between, and I've faced 85 to 105, and I can square the ball up with all those bats at all those velocities, well, then when I get in a game, I'm not going to face anything that I haven't seen in practice already. I have the solution. My body has the solution to accomplish that task. So those are some things to think about. I know it's a lot of kind of theoretical information for you guys, but it can be distilled down very simply. When you're looking at which type of practice to choose, are you going to have to compete that day, or are you trying to build a skill set in practice to compete at a later date? If you're competing that day, block practice is probably the way to go. If you're building for the future and you're not competing that day, randomized practice is probably the way to go. And so hopefully that gives you a little bit of explanation about what randomized practice is, what block practice is, the reasons why each are effective, and when to use each type. So that's all for today. That's the episode. Talked a little bit about practice and how to maximize it, how to get the most out of your reps. If you haven't already, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. That would really help me out trying to get to 50,000 subscribers as soon as possible. On my way to 100,000 this year. That is the goal. If you haven't told your friends about this and you think they could get some value out of this channel, I would really appreciate if you shared this with people. I'm trying to reach as many baseball players and as many fans as possible to share this information and connect with you guys. So leave me a like, leave me a comment, what you would like to see more of, less of, what you thought of this video. Share this channel with your friends. That would do a lot of good for me, help me help a lot more people. And I hope you guys are all well. And I miss baseball. Hope to get back out there very soon and see you guys in a ballpark very, very soon. Have a good one.